It's football and other F words. My name is Zach Lyons. You follow me on Twitter at the Zach Lyons. And this is 104. This is football and other F words on 1045 The Zone. And you can go to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live and join the chat to come chat with us and everything. We got a lot to get to. Joined today on today's episode with Mike, who just left. So I was going to introduce Mike Herndon, but he just left, running from the grind, apparently, and that's why he had to leave. And then we got Stony Keeley at Stony Keeley on Twitter if you want to join up with him. I was kind of expecting, Mike to be here to maybe, to chat about Rashad Weaver, Caleb Murphy, but I guess he just doesn't want to. So he left right when we get into introductions. So very interesting choice.
Running from the smoke.
Running from the smoke. Because I think he knows that I'm not wrong. In the sense that he wants me to be wrong.
I'm also concerned that his camera did look a little smoky. Like, we need to make sure he's okay.
Yeah, make sure there's actually not a fire.
The office is not on fire. Yes.
He has popped back in, not running from the grind like we thought he may be. So I did the introductions and everything, Mike, and I'm going to say what I am wrong about, and then we'll let you talk. I was wrong based on new information given to me during the Saints game that Rashad Weaver is better than anybody in coverage. I think he's even worse than Trey Avery in coverage. He may be one of the worst people I've ever seen coverage based on that Saints game. And I was wrong that Caleb Murphy would make the initial 53. So those are the two things I was wrong about. Mike, I'll give it to you. Look at this. I mean, just constantly.
All right, my connection is terrible.
Nothing can you hear me, guys? Say. Okay, we can hear you now. And he's frozen. Someone needs to go reset their router over in Texas, is what I'm assuming. Mike, are you there? You're starting to move a little.
All right, am I back on now?
Yes.
We can hear you.
You can't hear us?
Can you hear me? Because y'all are freezing up bad.
No, you are the one that is freezing up.
Sometimes.
Yeah. You need to go reset your router or something because we're fine. I think you're the one that's incorrect.
I think he's just scared.
Private chat.
Yeah, Mike did not strike me as the type of coward that would fake connection issues to dodge the smoke from Zach.
Yeah. I mean, usually, he would be all about it. But while we wait for Mike to figure out whatever's going on his end, both of our cameras are working and everything. So let's just start.
That they are.
Let's start with the offensive line, because I feel like that's where, your bread and butter is made on the offensive line. And lo and behold, Leroy Watson and Geron Christian, the tape matched what we said, and what we said matched what Brian Callahan and that crew thought, and Geron Christian and Leroy Watson. Leroy Watson made it on the practice squad, but Geron Christian is nowhere to be found on this roster. It's a terrifying thing, to be honest with you. Why I am happy for Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu. I am happy that Bill Callahan and Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon saw enough progress through the offseason to reward them. But it's very dire at this point. And listen, let's be honest. Most teams who do not have who have one of their offensive tackles go down are in a dire situation.
Yes.
But this seems like playing with fire, don't you think?
I don't know, Zach. I listened to them talk about Jalen Duncan and how much he has improved over the course of the summer. You watch the tape. I think he was, outside of J.C. Latham and Nicholas Petit-Frere, clearly the best tackle, the clear swing tackle option based off of the preseason tape. Has Mike just taken over the whole broadcast? No, okay. It's still going. All right. I think Jalen Duncan had the best tape. I actually feel like he's really starting to come into his own a little bit, maybe hit a different gear. The tape on Sunday was good, and there were flashes of things that he struggled with in the past that he had corrected. The footwork, the wide base, kind of mirroring the edge rusher, like core to core, the positioning, the angles of his pass sets, like getting to where he needed to be to stop the edge rusher. It seemed a little more advanced than what we've seen from Duncan in the past. So I kind of looked at it like, man, everybody's picking Geron Christian to be this swing tackle, but if you based it off of the tape alone, I don't know how you choose him over Jalen Duncan. And in the end, Duncan won out. Now, Brian Callahan's comments about Ojukwu in today's presser were pretty interesting as well, because I felt the same thing. The first two preseason games were pretty disastrous. And I held steady on Ojukwu making the 53-man roster because I thought all of the reps in the spring and the summer had to count for something. And if you looked at it from a body of work standpoint, I still thought he was a better option than Geron Christian, who moved pretty stiff when in game action and just didn't look that great. But then in that New Orleans game, the third preseason game, I thought Ojukwu really turned it around, had a nice little game. Brian Callahan's comments reflected that. I think there is still upside. Those two. Ojukwu Mania is back on, and while I've got the floor, I want to thank everybody that has reached out to me to celebrate the rebirth of Ojukwu Mania on Twitter this week. We are back up. It's back on. You can't stop the hype train again.
I love it. I think that is a passionate speech about these two offensive linemen that have probably been a little, maybe critics have been a little too harsh on them for some point.
Perhaps.
Mike, you are sort of back. You say you can hear us clearly. We'll see if we can hear you clearly. You have the floor to talk about Weavergate.
Can you guys hear me at all?
Yes.
Yes.
And now he can't hear us again.
It has to be his internet. I mean, so there you go.
All right. Can you guys hear me? Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, we can hear you right now. You got maybe like 5 minutes of internet.
Yep. Live podcasting, pal. Live podcasting.
Again, running from the grind when I pass the torch to him to tell me that I'm wrong. His internet conveniently screws up. So
I think what you said is great, by the way. I think that's a great way of putting it. I think that a lot of people got way too down way too quickly on Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu. I think there's still upside there. You hope that you're not going to need them this season, but the reality of offensive line play across the NFL right now is that it's hard to find offensive tackles, and this is not a problem that's unique to the Titans. So for me, from where I sit, I think I feel pretty good about this offensive line group, which, by the way, I had 10 guys on my 53 roster. The 10th guy I had was Cole Spencer, who's on the practice squad. Otherwise, I went 9 for 9 for the rest of the offensive line.
Look at you.
Stuck to my guns.
We got Dylan Madden, who says Alex Leatherwood, ! Worth a shot. No, he is not. Sorry, Dylan. I have to be pretty blunt. He is not worth a shot. I don't even like. I looked the other day, and as I tried to get this thing off of here, what is it doing? There we go.
We're off to a great start tonight. You got to love it.
I don't understand what's going on right now. We may be having Dylan Madden up on
the entire show.
The entire show. There we go.
Right.
Got him
there
out.
We go. All right.
I looked the other day, looking at Alex Leatherwood's, stats and stuff. Was not pretty. The snap counts and all that stuff was not pretty.
I will give Alex Leatherwood the benefit of the doubt. In a moment of transparency, I have not exactly been crushing Alex Leatherwood all 22. So maybe maybe there's something to it, but I will say that he has not panned out in every opportunity that he's gotten and remains on the bottom of every depth chart that he's been a part of. And I'm good. I actually feel like guard is the strength of this offensive line group. So I'm good with the guards that they got.
Let's I want to do something real quick if I can find. Okay, so regular season snaps. He has played since 2021. No, 2021 he played 1,104. That was his rookie year with Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Then they cut him and he
Mhm.
played 32 snaps in the regular season 2022, and that's it. So I think
Yeah, he
we're all
fell
good
off
on
pretty
Miles
quickly.
Leatherwood.
Yeah.
We're gonna attempt one more time. I have told it's like this is like talking to my dad. I have told Mike 13 times to reset his router. What are
Yeah.
the chances that he has not reset his router when we bring him back on? All right, Mike, are you there?
He's there. Oh boy.
Oh boy, what a screenshot.
What a
Someone should definitely
screenshot.
screenshot that right there.
No, poor Mike. I can't do that to him.
Yeah, it's just not working. It's just not working for Mike today. He's gonna have to tell me some other way how I was wrong. Okay.
Are we getting kicked off 104.5 The Zone for this?
This is a bad one. Okay. So I'm gonna text him one more time to please reset your router.
Yeah.
Okay,
Probably not a bad move here. To Z Dean in the comments while you do that, Stoney,
Yeah.
can we get a film breakdown of the new waiver claimed guys? I haven't gotten on it yet. I'm still working on Ernest Jones the fourth. I'm one game in right there, but I would love to watch some Ali Gay and some Julius Wood because Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan raved about those guys in the press availability today. So I'll cut something up.
Okay, so here we go. Let's just dive right into it. We're just gonna have to keep plowing along.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Malik Willis was traded, Stoney, to the Green Bay Packers. Great job by Rand getting something from a player that you were obviously going to cut. If you're going to trade him for a 7th round pick, you are obviously going to cut him.
Yes.
I think it's great that Malik Willis is also getting a shot on a team that is actually really good because the Tennessee Titans were a team that was really good for Malik as well now. Hasn't been in the past. But I contend this idea that Malik Willis never developed, I feel is incorrect under the Vrabel era.
I think so too.
Because I look at it this way. He was bad the first year.
Yeah.
He was less bad the second year, and he was less bad this year. That shows progression. That shows development. And some of that is his own work outside. His dedication at his craft. Some of that is this year probably a better surrounding, supporting cast. But at this point, you can't just I just have a hard time saying they didn't develop him. I have a hard time saying that Charles London sat on his ass and ignored him. I have a hard time saying that Tim Kelly and Pat O'Hara, who have developed Deshaun Watson, didn't develop him either. I just have a hard time believing it. Does that mean that maybe they were the best people to try to develop him? Sure, maybe they weren't. Maybe if he would have been with Andy Reid or another coaching staff, maybe if he was with the Green Bay Packers the entire time, would he have developed quicker? Sure, maybe. That's a possibility. But at the end of the day, he developed. And I just feel, as much crap that we give the Mike Vrabel era, the Mike Vrabel coaching staff and all that, I don't feel like this is one of them.
I'm with you. And listen, you don't have to explain it to me. I've been making apologies for Tim Kelly all summer long. People kind of a little hard on that guy, but some good creative stuff last season. And with Malik Willis, I think people were too hard on him. You talked about that with the offensive tackle situation with the backups. I think people were a little too hard on Malik Willis because there was noticeable improvement from him this preseason in his ball placement and the touch on some of the intermediate stuff to the outside. No, he's kind of been like an outside the numbers thrower, but to see pieces of the puzzle start to come together for Malik, it was promising and promising enough for the Green Bay Packers to forfeit a draft pick to come get him. Now, I think the question with Malik Willis has always been, knowing his quarterback class was not that great. People were saying you'd have to roll.
Rest in peace of Desmond Ritter.
Yeah, you'd have to roll the dice on the physical traits with Malik Willis because you're looking for upside in that draft class that didn't have a whole lot of upside. But at the same time, acknowledging how raw he was as a passer, the offense that he ran at Liberty was anything but a pro-ready NFL offense. It was going to take time. So whoever drafted him flipped the hourglass over. And the question was, how long until it ran out? How much patience did you have? With this current Titans regime, knowing how Will Levis plays a physical style of football, you hope you can get him to rein it in, but all it takes is one hit for Will Levis to be knocked out. The backup quarterback position is crucial, and they wanted somebody in there that they could rely upon to run the offense the way that they wanted it run. And Mason Rudolph is just flat out that dude. He is tailor-made for what they're looking for in a backup quarterback. So I don't see it as an indictment of Malik Willis the way that some people do. I think it's a good opportunity for him. By the way, the Green Bay Packers have done a hell of a job developing Jordan Love so far. So now he's going to go back him up there. I think it's good for him, man. And the question with Malik from the broader sense outside of Nashville at the NFL level is, can he hang around on practice squads, backup roles long enough to turn into something on down the line? So I'm with you, Zach. I think there has been improvement from Malik Willis. And personally, I think this is one of those rare moves that is a win-win for both parties involved.
All right, Granddad Mike finally listened to me and I guess reset his router or something.
No,
it's
it was
clear. Whatever you just did while you were gone is now clear. You're here.
Browser
Okay, we'll get to Weavergate. But first, what are your thoughts on them keeping Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu over Geron Christian and Leroy Watson? And then I'll ask you about Malik Willis.
I'd say it's like a mild surprise because I kept thinking about it going into the 53-man roster. My initial 53-man roster projection, I'd put Geron Christian in there for the reason of he's got some starts under his belt. He's got a little experience. He wasn't terrible last year down the stretch for the Browns playing left tackle for them after they got 8 guys injured or whatever it was. But the more I watched the preseason, I think that last preseason game, it kind of crystallized for me. And it wasn't that like Ojukwu was that great or anything like that. It was just that Geron Christian just looked so stiff and so old. And yeah, he's not that old a guy, but he just cannot move. If you just watched him, the more I watched him, I was like, they can't keep this guy. They just can't. I think the morning, or maybe it was the day before the cut down day, I changed my pick to Ojukwu because there was no way they were going to keep Christian. So they're super young and inexperienced behind 2 young and inexperienced tackles. I mean, that's a risky deal. I mean, if anyone's going to pull it off, it's Bill Callahan. But I kind of wouldn't be that shocked if they had their eyes out there on the market for an older tackle. I still can't believe like Cam Fleming hasn't signed anywhere. Does he just not like want to play this year or whatever? But I feel like he would be.
Isn't he a little maybe bad medicals?
Could be, but I think he played last year, or it was at least on a roster.
Yeah, I thought he played last year too.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's guys out there that I felt like, Fleming is a guy that I've kind of wanted for a long time. And to me still feels like a good fit for what they need as far as just kind of a steady hand guy that can get you out of a game without getting Levis killed if something happened to Latham or Petit Frere. But I mean, who knows? Maybe Duncan and Ojukwu can get there, in relatively short order. I mean, I think they're both clearly the 3rd and 4th most talented tackles on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, they are only the 3rd.
Well, now, obviously. before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the Malik Willis trade, just real quick? Because I think we covered, for the most part, probably your same sentiment. But what were your thoughts on the Malik Willis trade?
I think it's good for everybody. It's good for the Titans to move on. I mean, I think everyone had kind of accepted he was depth at this point and not the guy. Levis is clearly the guy they've hitched their wagon to, rightfully so. He performed better, but to get a start somewhere else, a clear,
Oh
Well,
man,
well.
did he freeze up on you
Yeah,
too?
froze up for me too.
Oh man, we were rolling so good there for a second. I thought we were gonna make it, but as soon as we get close to Weavergate, he freezes up. I mean, this is no coincidence. This is insane. What kind of coincidence this is? Okay, we're gonna roll right on through. Mason Kinsey did not make the roster, even though that he was DeAndre Hopkins' equal in some people's eye and the heir apparent to wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Were you surprised at all that Mason Kinsey did not make it?
I was not surprised that Mason Kinsey did not make it. I'll be honest. I thought his performance throughout the summer was good enough that I kind of thought he was like the one guy they were going to cut that would get picked up, but they were able to get him back on the practice squad. So that's good. And you heard Brian Callahan mention him by name in the press conference today as an option at punt returner, because he was asked about them, carrying one punt returner. And he mentioned that, Tyler Boyd has returned punts in the past and Mason Kinsey's on the practice squad. So I don't think this is just a, stash him and forget about him kind of deal. Like, I have a feeling we're going to see Mason Kinsey play at some point this season.
Oh, stop it. Stop it, Stoney.
It's been his
I mean, like,
best
why are you
summer ever.
wishing someone to get injured? Why are you projecting an injury?
Well, maybe Jaquan Jackson's just a bust. I don't know.
Oh man. That's ridiculous. I'm hoping that they maybe some of the waiver wire, the players that got cut today that are hitting the waiver wires, maybe one of them will end up, getting on the practice squad, and then Mason Kinsey can get cut. Mason Kinsey's a nice guy. Sometimes your time in Tennessee is over, and they did a good job of flushing out a lot of those people, in my opinion. Like, they didn't bring back a lot of people. They only brought back 12, and some of these guys are new to the practice squad. Some of them are new to the Tennessee Titans. So I look at it this way. I'd rather have it's a horrible way to put it, because I don't think a lot of these people are. I'd rather have a new bad player than an old bad player. And it's like Mason Kinsey has run his course in Tennessee. Justin Mello couldn't even spell his name right. Called him Mason Kinsey.
Well, listen, I'm not saying that's what I want to happen. I would prefer Bryce Oliver making the roster over Mason Kinsey, but I kind of think they like Mason Kinsey inside the building, and that's what I'm basing this on, is that Brian Callahan's bringing up practice squad players by name in press conferences. It's kind of like, after talking about the preseason that he had and how much they used him, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking we might be wrong on this read, that they might really like Mason Kinsey and he might be that 7th wide receiver and that 2nd punt returner. I don't know.
I think this is where sports people, sports analysts, sports coaches, players, everything, let the movie Rudy, which is a terrible movie, by the way, influence them too much, because this just feels like it's just Rudy. Like, it's just like, oh, he's got a plucky attitude and he's funny after the catch sometimes, and he plays golf with Will Levis and
great
blah,
meme
blah, blah.
guy.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Okay, Mike is back with us. I'm going to skip the Malik Willis talk, because I don't know how long your internet's going to last, Mike. Here's your chance, Weavergate. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, for one, you said Caleb Murphy was absolutely not making this roster, which was dead wrong.
And I did say I was wrong about
you
that.
said he is absolutely not making this roster.
I did.
Okay. They clearly preferred Murphy to Weaver, which a lot of people, not just you, just dismissed me out of hand when I brought that up over a week ago.
No, they prefer Gay to
crazy
Weaver.
that Weaver. They what?
They prefer Ali Gay to Weaver, not Murphy to Weaver. Ali Gay is obviously the replacement for Rashad Weaver.
Well, yeah, and Murphy too.
They're very segmented.
And Murphy. And they also chose Murphy because he's still on the roster too. Weaver
for
could
now.
still have that spot. They could have Gay and Weaver.
Man, we
All right,
lost
am I
him.
back?
Really? No. I mean, sort of. I mean,
It's-
like, okay, you're back right now.
Yeah,
This
so
podcast is.
I
There's a
think
time
a lot
delay.
of people dismissed me out of Van. This is brutal. This is brutal.
We you should be us.
I think I think Zach is doing this intentionally to sabotage my Weaver victory lap.
You just need to keep
All
talking.
right, I'm out of
Quit
here, guys.
pausing. Don't pause. Okay. I'm not sabotaging. I don't know how I can mess up with his internet or anything here in Tennessee.
There was a time delay that was messing us up there.
Yeah, I think that's why I tried telling him like keep on talking, because the time delay, he would have just probably caught up to it at some point. Okay, so oh my gosh, that's just terrible.
We're here. We're here now.
Bad. We're here. Okay, so here's what he's going to say is that the Tennessee Titans chose Rashad Weaver over Caleb Murphy. No, they chose Ali Gay over Rashad Weaver. Because this team has been very segmented in their thinking. They even talked about it today when talking about the tight ends and about how certain tight ends do certain things and all this stuff.
Sure.
Obviously, Ali Gay is the Rashad Weaver replacement. Tyus Bowser, who they are bringing in and worked out, probably the Caleb Murphy, the guy that's going to replace Caleb Murphy.
Okay.
All I said, and he is right. And I said that at the beginning. I did say that at the beginning that he's right. I said that Caleb Murphy is absolutely not making this roster, and I was wrong. He also said that Rashad Weaver was not making this initial 53, and he was wrong. So we were both wrong there. And like I said, I listened back to it, and I was definitely wrong after presented with new horrible information from the New Orleans Saints. He is just not good at coverage. So I was wrong there too. But I was right. I said that he was going to make the team.
He made the team.
Know.
He made the team.
And what did I say after he made the team? I'd say he would likely get cut after he made the team. And what happened?
Yeah.
He got cut.
I think it's important to remind our viewers what you said in the group chat earlier today. I think it's a great point. A court would rule that you are technically right in this situation. Yep. So therefore, you're right. I don't see the issue with that. I can't speak for you. I can speak for myself, and I know what was in my heart. And in my heart, I thought there's no way they're going to take Caleb Murphy over Rashad Weaver. But like you said, the New Orleans game, I watched that live and thought, oh boy, this is it in real time. Remember last year when we watched Ryan Tannehill take on the New Orleans Saints, and you and I texted each other after the game like, oh boy, this might be it. It was that same kind of feeling with Rashad Weaver, because he just kind of looked lost in coverage at times. And the criticisms that I had for Caleb Murphy that I brought up on last week's show, like, get more active with your hands, get more pass rush moves. Don't just rely on your power and your speed to run right through guys, because he's not better than Rashad Weaver at that. But I tipped my cap to Mike during the game. There were reps that I watched where Caleb Murphy was doing a great job fighting off offensive tackles' hands, getting around guys and pressuring the quarterback. There's a rep they replayed on the broadcast where he legit just grabs the tackle's outside wrist, politely pushes it down, and gets around him. And I watched that game and I thought, you know what? If they can get this out of Caleb Murphy, and Rashad Weaver is doing whatever he's doing, being put in a blender on the other side of the field, then I'll concede that keeping Caleb Murphy was the right choice. Now, to add some context to that, I initially made the pick giving Weaver the benefit of the doubt that his power, straight line power, and the experience playing in the NFL would give him the edge. But to Mike's point, at this point, I think you probably do know what Rashad Weaver is in his full form, and maybe Murphy hasn't gotten to his full form just yet. So I'll say this, Zach, I still don't know if picking Caleb Murphy over Rashad Weaver was the right move. Time will tell, But for now, I can concede that at the very least, I think it's obvious the Titans liked Murphy more than Weaver.
Yeah, I still contend that it's more of just how they run the roster. I think that they view that other edge guy, not really a coverage guy, a guy that maybe needs to play coverage, but I think they're looking for a guy that could set the edge. And they
So
thought Rashad Weaver could be that guy, and he just Ali Gay sets the edge better than Rashad Weaver. And that's what I think they're looking for out of that fourth edge guy.
yeah,
And obviously, if they're claiming him off the roster, they're going to put him onto the 53, obviously, because you have to, and it's going to be there for 3 weeks. So they must think really highly of his run defense. And there are plays. In fact, Mike Herndon shared them of Ali Gay doing a good job in the run game and allowing other people. He's kind of eating up space. It's almost like I wouldn't be surprised if they play him more as a defensive end than a true edge.
yeah.
And that is the plan with him.
Well, Rand Carthon said in the press conference today that he was an edge, but he's versatile, so he can line up
Yeah.
anywhere along the front. Also called him a long, rangy guy as well.
And then, of course, Elijah Molden got traded, which I think was it sounds like, according to Justin Mello, that he was disgruntled. I kind of don't blame him. They just kind of like treated him
I
as
know,
such.
man, and
And then they made him play a lot of preseason. I think that was probably, there was times where you're watching that second preseason game, you're like, Elijah Molden's still out there. Why are they treating him like this? And I guess he's not a good soldier like Nick Westbrook-Akine. And he decided to raise some hell, and they ended up trading him for 2026 seventh, which is all these apparently Rand is going to cook in 2026. That's the plan. Master class coming on the way in 2026. So Stoney, I'll ask you. I mean, we're both Elijah Molden supporters
for sure.
I've loved him ever since they drafted him. I liked him pre-draft and all that kind of stuff. I think he was underappreciated and underutilized here in Tennessee. And I know that he had that season with the season-long injury and all that kind of stuff. And I know that the Tennessee Titans didn't really handle him coming back from injury very well. It was very peculiar. But Elijah Molden going to the Los Angeles Chargers to Jesse Minter, who's trying to recreate, that defense with Bud Dupree, Teair Tart, Elijah Molden, and Christian Fulton. Don't really understand it. But I think out of those four, Elijah Molden is by far the best. And I do think you'll be hearing Elijah Molden's name on Sundays for the Chargers making plays.
I do too. And I was kind of all the moves today, this kind of felt like the biggest gut punch to me because I was such a big fan of his. I did a deep dive into his film earlier this summer and kind of asserting that, hey, this is his time to shine. This was before the Jamal Adams signing, obviously before the Quandre Diggs signing as well. But seeing those moves happen after coming out and saying like, oh, it's time for Molden to ascend to the throne, he's going to be the starting safety, it did put some doubt into my mind as to how this staff looked at Molden. And I don't know if you caught it, but when asked about what went into the trade, deciding to trade Elijah Molden, Brian Callahan had a very interesting look on his face when he turned and looked at Rand Carthon as if to say, oh boy, you handle this one. And Rand said something along the lines of, I'm aware, I know what the reports are that are out there, and then said, we'll talk about that at another time. Did not seem very eager to get into the Elijah Molden discussion today. So I'm curious, man, to be a fly on the wall to see how those conversations went, because I thought Molden could have taken the other starting safety position next to Amani Hooker and played pretty well. I thought his tape from 2023 was pretty good as well. I don't know what the move here is, but at the very least, you can say they got something for him. But I'm with you. I think he's going to be a player for LA.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean,
Was it just the
probably
injuries? The
I
health?
don't know. I wonder, if you look at this roster and you look at the turnover that it's gone through, you saw that they didn't really want to play Dylan Radins too, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is like everybody's
NPF is
saying these are the last. Oh, well, NPF and Radens made it, but those two positions were up for grabs all summer long. Like
yeah.
I know NPF was hurt, but they gave other guys every opportunity to solidify themselves as those starters. And if Sadiq Charles doesn't retire, I don't think Dylan Radens is the starting right guard.
Let's talk through this real quick. So Will Levis, Rand Carthon, Tajay Spears, Rand Carthon. I mean, these are the
Yeah.
guys that came in through Rand Carthon. So you go to the offense. Traylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, they earned their spots. They have endeared themselves to this coaching staff. But they still brought in Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and Jaquan Jackson.
Yes.
So it's not like they were totally in love with them. They still brought in 3 new faces on that and on that right there.
Yeah.
Chigakonkwo. Okay. They have been trying to push a Josh Wiley tight end one agenda pretty much all summer long that we've been talking about. They brought in Nick Vanette, Thomas Odukoya as a holdover, but he's kind of endeared himself into this, to this coaching staff. And then they got David Martin Robinson. So Chig is a guy that's kind of not probably like a 50% strength grip on his roster spot.
Yeah. And I mean,
Then
you don't want to entertain these conspiracy theories because they seem kind of baseless. I've yet to see somebody like with concrete reporting say, "Hey, I think this is a possibility," but there are some rumblings floating around
Yeah.
that they've got 5 tight ends and Chigakonkwo could potentially be a trade target. Again, I hate to breathe life into those, but it's easy to look to the point we're talking about here. It's easy to point to him as a potential loss in all of this, in the math.
I would have a hard time believing it, but
I would too.
I mean, it's a possibility. Dylan Radins would
Yeah.
be another one that, yeah, again, Rashad Weaver just got cut. You look at the linebackers, none of the linebackers matter. Roger McCreary's like the only guy from the John Robinson era that has a firm grasp on the job.
But that's not the job they initially drafted him for, because they started playing him outside and they just moved him inside, realized he was better there, and stuck with it.
Yeah. So, and outside of these are the rookies, right? These are the guys that don't have big contracts or haven't proven themselves at the NFL level. These
Yeah.
are the guys that are basically the people that are still on rookie contracts, and they're pretty much all gone. I mean, that's a lot of roster turnover, and that should kind of tell you, in my mind, that our guys are our guys, and that's just how we're going to roll.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah. I mean,
What
absolutely.
it feels like.
I think, there's another layer of this that makes me wonder how much of this would we have seen last season if not for Mike Vrabel supposedly rumored to have like held on to certain guys, to be steadfast in supporting certain guys on the roster, because it just kind of feels like the first initial roster cut day that we have with Rand Carthon and no Mike Vrabel, it is just a wash. I mean, it is a bloodbath for all the J-Rob / Vrabel guys.
So Hassan Haskins obviously is one of those guys that got cut.
Yes.
Right. So Kyle Phillips got cut. It's just, listen, and look, I agree with Section 240 here. We're both wearing his shirts.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. That was the wrong. Someone got in there. We'll go back to you, Willie Jeans. We could have started the rebuild earlier. And I think we kind of agreed, sitting on the fence last year. They should have started the rebuild last year. And that would have involved getting rid of Derrick Henry last year.
Yeah.
And listen, that's easy to say in hindsight, but that's something that we both have talked about on various podcasts that they should have done at the time that this was all going through.
For sure.
So I look at this whole thing and I'm like, looking at the roster construction, it's just like, maybe it's just there's something maybe fruit of the poisonous tree. This is kind of not the same thing as that. How that's normally used, but they're all from the Vrabel tree, and
Yeah.
maybe there's something rotten with the tree, and these players are just not fully buying in to the new philosophy. And if they have bought into the new philosophy, they're just not good enough to the standard that this team is setting. They may be good enough for the past regime standard, but they're
Sure.
not good enough for this team's standards.
Yeah, and I think there absolutely could be some of that going on because from the reports that we heard late into last season, November and December, were that, players were kind of divided. The message was wearing thin for some players, but there were still players there that were loyal because it did work. And we don't know who was who or what conversations were being had behind closed doors. So who knows? I mean, it could have just been a simple case of bad fit. Don't don't want you here.
Yeah, I mean that's ultimately what it feels like. The Tennessee Titans have 4 cornerbacks.
I don't love that.
It's peculiar, but I'm not too worried about it right now. It's kind of like Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu. You could get by maybe the first week or two with that kind of configuration.
Yeah.
But if it really gets down to the nuts and bolts, you got to figure out a 5th cornerback.
Yeah.
And listen, they said today that, oh, well, we got, guys on the practice squad. We can call up, Gabe Jeudy-Lally. We can call up Trey Avery. We can call up Anthony Kendall. We can call up these guys. But at the end of the day, you would like some stability, right? You would like to have someone on the stability side. And maybe, listen, we're recording this on Wednesday night. Thursday is another big waiver claim day.
Yeah.
Then they will probably sign people. I don't think by week, I would say by week 1, they'll have a 5th cornerback on the 53. It's just very odd that they decided to do that and then go through all these safeties. And then you're like, well, they trade Elijah Molden. Now that kind of makes a little sense, but you still need that other corner. They put Cedric Gray on short-term IR. So he designated a return. They got 5 tight ends.
Yeah.
I mean, the roster configuration sent a lot of people spiraling. And I just kind of looked at it like this. Brian Callahan told everybody for weeks the best 53 is going to make this roster regardless of their position played. We are not looking at tight end and saying, well, we can only keep 4. It's the best 53. And at the end of the day, Nick Vannett, in their eyes, is better than Gabe Jeudy-Lally. Julius Chestnut is better than Mason Kinsey. David Martin Robinson is better than Corey Levitt. At the end of the day, that is what they're telling you. They're telling you that Jalen Duncan is better than any guy on their practice squad and any guy they let go.
Yeah.
And they actually told you that Rashawn Weaver and Elijah Molden were the same. Those are back-end guys that they felt the same about. But at the end of the day, those are the current iteration is your best 53.
Yeah, and Brian Callahan reiterated that in the press conference today when he was asked about keeping 5 tight ends. Was that indicative of the type of personnel you want to run and the type of offense that you want to run, or was it just a byproduct of getting the best 53? And he doubled down on that and he said it's the latter. It is getting the best 53 on this roster. Now, I am a little more concerned about the cornerback situation than I think you are because I'm looking at it from 3 deep. You've got Awuzie, you've got Sneed on the outside, you've got McCreary in the slot, and you've got one guy on the 53 right now that could back those guys up if anything were to happen to them. So you're a player away from having nobody on the roster that could do it. And then you are going to have to call up a Gabe Jeudy-Lally, who I like quite a bit as a prospect, but I don't know if he's quite ready to be a full-time starter in the NFL in the regular season. And Trey Avery, who we kind of know what he is, super athletic guy, but gets turned around super easy in coverage. So I think it's a pretty dire situation. To your point, there's another waiver wave coming through that maybe you see a guy become available that you weren't quite expecting, but it's the same conversation we're having for other positions. The people that are available right now are not going to be Pro Bowl caliber quality starters in the NFL. So
They just got to be better than Luke Gifford.
they got to be better than Luke Gifford. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the truth right
That's
there.
what it. I thought it was weird. So Rent Carthon said we're going to really utilize this 7th spot on the waiver wire and blah 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 blah. They put in 2 claims, and earlier on the radio I said, "Listen, guys, I just want to caution you. Just because they only were awarded 2 people doesn't mean that they only put in 2 claims. They
Yeah.
probably put in claims, and those players got taken before them by someone in by a team higher in the waiver wire priority."
Right.
Well, Rand Carthon goes and says, "No, we
Got everybody we wanted.
nobody ahead of us took anybody that we wanted."
Yeah.
So that means you only put in 2 claims. That's
You weren't
not
active.
utilizing the 7th spot. I am sorry, that is not utilizing the 7th spot. You're telling me that and I'm blanking on his name again. I cannot believe I knew this. The defensive backs coach, or not Steven Jackson, but
Chris Harris.
Chris Harris. Thank you. I keep wanting to say Chris Smith, but Chris Harris. He didn't try to get you to get Tariq Castro Fields, who he loved in Washington and who he was like the prototypical corner that you seem to want.
Yeah.
And you need a corner.
Yeah.
I just, that's one of those things that's like where a GM or a coach says something and just like, what?
Well, do
Then-
you give him any sort of benefit of the doubt here and say, well, maybe there's a certain player that he's holding out hope for, or maybe he's making phone calls about trade possibilities? Anything like that enters the equation here?
I mean, it must. I mean, there must be something that he maybe overvalued or overrated, or maybe thought that something was coming, but like it just doesn't, like, if he would have said yes, that would have made me feel a lot better, right? I mean, like, aren't we talking a different story and having a different conversation? It's just like, man, fuck those Panthers. Like, they took everybody. They took like 7 people.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, just Ali Gay and you, because they talk about, well, we cranked through all this tape until we couldn't watch tape anymore, and we did all this stuff, and you walked away with just Ali Gay and Julius Woods. That's
at one of those, at a position that I think you've got some pretty good bodies stacked at, and the other, Ali Gay, defensive line, gonna be like the 5th guy at best in the rotation, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
But and then you also look at this. I mean, people are like, well, apparently try to get Bradbury. They're trying to trade for Bradbury. Bradbury's transitioning to safety. This
Another
fucking team
safety.
does not need any more safeties.
Oh,
My
good.
God, let
We're
these
done.
safeties go. And maybe their idea is to transition them back to cornerback, right? And
Yeah.
they're going to say, hey, we're going to put you back at cornerback, but you're going to have to be our 5th cornerback.
Mhm.
Is James Bradbury going to go for that when he gets here?
I don't know.
I something about the Bradbury trade just doesn't sit right with me.
I am just glad that they didn't put a claim in on Rock Ya-Sin, because
Yes.
anytime he's popped up on
terrible.
my radar watching tape the last couple years, he has been straight ass cheeks.
Well, speaking of a guy that's popped up on their radar, they brought in Tyus Bowser in today. He's worked out for the Cowboys. I know Aaron Wilson said that he worked out for the Colts yesterday, but I think he worked out for the Cowboys yesterday.
Yeah.
So, but maybe it was the Colts, but I'm pretty sure it's Cowboys. That's a guy that, and I said it today, that Tyus Bowser is a guy where we're going to be saying at this time next year, or really, January or February of next year, man, he really turned it on at the halfway point of the season, or those final 4 weeks, he really got right.
Yeah.
And that's my thing with Tyus Bowser. It's like he wasn't trending in the right direction before the injury. He was having a down year. Now, he
Yeah.
had a great 2021, but 2022, he was trending to have a down year, and he didn't play at all in 2023. And the Tennessee Titans feel like they have a lot of guys that a lot of older guys coming off injuries that haven't played a lot. but there isn't really anybody else with his NFL experience out there except for Yannick Ngakoue and Justin Houston, who are both older.
I don't think
So
you're
it's
getting
like
those
the
guys to
best.
set an edge either.
Yeah, and that's like the best of a bad situation. And that's
Yeah.
where it's at. Like, I'm not getting excited over Ty Spouser like I wasn't getting excited over KJ Henry, like I wasn't getting excited over there's some other loser that got mentioned recently too that I think he got picked up. I can't even remember him. It's whatever that list that Mike made that was just filled with crappy players. And listen, that's what you're gonna get. That's what
Yeah.
it just is what it is. But I will say, it's that or Caleb Murphy, and it's Tyus Bowser over, Ali Gay, and Tyus Bowser would be your edge 3/4. I would prefer just roll out with Jalen Harold till he
I'm
just
with you.
can't play in the NFL at this point.
Yeah.
Like, until he proves he's in over his head, you just roll Jalen Harold out there as much as possible.
Well, it's the conversation we had about Cedric Gray. Just get him out there and let him work through the issues. And I'm at that point with Jalen Harrell where he's the third guy to me at this point. Get him on the field, get him reps, see what you got there. I don't know that it's going to make that big of a difference putting a guy like Bowser out there myself.
Yeah. John Gall says, so then why did you complain about the waiver wire thing? I'm not complaining that they didn't put any claims in
Yeah.
just because of they didn't get any bad players. I am complaining, and I'm not really complaining. I'm pointing out that
Highlight.
Ray Carthon said one thing and did another. He was talking out, and I don't prefer a on and off season where the head coach and the GM for the most part has what they say they're going to do has turned into what has their words have turned into actions. I'm going to call them out when their words do not turn into actions. When their actions don't match the words that they told us, they deserve to be called out. If he would have said at the very beginning, we'll see what the waiver wire looks like, maybe we'll take advantage of it, maybe we won't, we'll see. Instead, he said, we're going to be using that waiver wire a lot. And that there's a big key difference. And that's what I'm pointing out.
Well, and I think there's a manner of accountability to be had here too. It's the same with the hiring of the friends. Like, if we're going to be critical, and I say we's like as a fan base, Titans fans, I tend to think all coaches just hire their friends. But if we collectively are going to be hypercritical of Mike Vrabel, the previous regime, just hiring all their buddies, we should at least just point it out whenever, Rand Carthon signs a player that has a relationship with his agent kind of deal. Like, hiring buddies, using relationships, that sort of thing. That's all it is just, hand up, hey, this is going on.
Yeah. I just always think that it's good to point out, because in the past there's been times where we just kind of gloss over these things, and then we're back here looking at them, and then we're adding up like, oh, we shouldn't probably have glossed over this, or we shouldn't have glossed over that. We should have caught this. We should have caught that. And it's just something that you got to keep track of. And, I don't care that he didn't use them if he hadn't said that he was going to use it a lot. And that are his words. He's talking like he was going to be putting in waiver claims like crazy.
It's just an interesting observation that I would like some clarity on. If somebody with a press badge would ask in a press conference, I think it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say.
The Tennessee Titans traded for Ernest Jones, and this is a feather in the cap of Rand Carthon. After we just got done trashing something.
No, I love Rand Carthon, by the way.
Yeah, we love Rand Carthon. Yeah. You're not going to find anybody that loves Rand Carthon more than us, besides maybe his family. But Ernest Jones gets traded, and that was a guy, when it got announced by Jordan DeJaney of CBS Sports that they gave him permission to seek a trade, right? So they gave him permission to seek a trade. He didn't request a trade, but that doesn't really matter in the world of the NFL. They just felt on their end contract negotiations weren't going where they wanted, so they're going to just go ahead and let him go seek a trade.
Yeah.
And I said the Tennessee Titans, the first thing I did that morning when I saw that was quote tweet, the Tennessee Titans absolutely should be kicking the tires on Ernest Jones. And then everybody else, woke up because I wake up early. So then I assume the rest of National Titans media woke up and they all started saying the same thing. But he is a guy that blitzes. He had 33 pressures last year, according to PFF. He's a guy that can play the run game. He's a leader. He wore the green dot. Aaron Donald said after he retired, "Young man, this is your team."
Ooh.
And shit went south.
It did.
And it's something that Sean McVay didn't want to talk about. He was very upset. And
it's been a little weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird. This is why you should not do press conferences on days you have roster cut down. Mike Vrabel, this happened to Mike Vrabel last year, and he was all pissy, and everybody's like, why is he so pissy? I don't get it. And I said, because he just had to tell 40 young men that their NFL dreams have come to an end at the Tennessee Titans.
Not a good day.
That is a tough emotional thing to do.
Yeah.
And Sean McVay not only had to do that, but then had to deal with his star linebacker, one of the best players on that defense, is getting traded, and he's pissed. So I don't blame him.
Justifiably.
Listen, yeah, it's justifiable. Have you been able to crank out some Ernest Jones tape? If so, what have you seen from Ernest Jones?
Yeah, so I'm one game in. I've watched his game against the Eagles, in which he had 15 tackles. It was one of 8 games that he had in 2023 with double-digit tackles, including
one of 8 games?
8 games with double-digit tackles, 2 of which he had 15 tackles in. And so I wanted to watch like the hyperactivity, obviously the hyper production of those games. So I started watching the Eagles game and then watching the New Orleans game as well. But I think what really got me going, the advanced stats courtesy of Pro Football Reference, missed 2 tackles for the entirety of the 2023 campaign. And this is a guy that had a lot of tackles in 2023. A missed tackle percentage of 1.3% in 2023. That is phenomenal. I think from what I can glean so far, incomplete film study done, this is an old-fashioned kind of linebacker. There is a throwback quality to this guy that reminds you of the good old days when linebackers would just get in a gap and blow somebody's head off. I mean, this is a linebacker that looks tailor-made to run what Denard Wilson wants to run, and to pair him with a guy like Kenneth Murray. This to me is, oh man, this is going to be a tidal wave hitting opposing offensive lines between this defensive front. And you start pairing the pieces together with T'Vondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, Arden Key, Kenneth Murray, Ernest Jones IV, and now these safeties and Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs and Amani Hooker, and they're going to be sending people from all over the field. He complements that very well. I think he's quick to recognize the run, doesn't fall for a lot of motion. He's very disciplined, eyes constantly engaged with the running back, getting in gaps, getting to the edge, forcing cutback lanes. It was successful. Or the Eagles had some success cutting back some of those times, but it's also, you've got Jalen Hurts running the ball, a little elusive. Maybe you're not expecting him to constantly tuck the ball and run in those situations. The play action stuff, I didn't hold that against him too much because he's getting to the edge, forcing the run back inside, and it's not necessarily on him if help is not in there to cover for him. So there's a play in the Eagles game where I thought, man, this guy has it. He's quick to diagnose the run, recognizes the play, kind of knifes through the traffic. There's a bunch of 3 guys out to the right. It looks like they're trying to set up a screen, but Jones kind of sees it coming, gets to the point of attack before the offensive line, the reaching right guard can get to him, knifes through all the traffic, gets into the backfield, blows it up, man. I'm impressed with this guy, and I think as long as you don't ask him to drop into coverage too much, which he admitted he's still kind of learning the ropes when it comes to that. If you don't have him dropping into coverage too much, which the Rams didn't against the Eagles, I think you got a gem here.
I was pulling up Spotrac to kind of look at what the Rams cap situation was, And it says today in transaction history, the Tennessee Titans traded for Reggie Gilbert back in 2019. Do you remember that?
How about that?
How about
Reggie
that?
Gilbert.
Okay, so the Rams right now, because we have a couple people asking why they didn't pay him. The Rams right now have $7.2 million in cap space for 2024. So, I mean, they, not a lot, but not preventing them from doing an extension. And next year, it's right now tentatively like 50 mil, maybe. So they could have paid him.
Yeah.
So sometimes what happens on these situations is that a team has a set number of what they think either a position is worth or how much they're going to allocate towards a position or how much they are willing to pay him versus paying maybe other upcoming free agents. You have to pick and choose. I think a good example is the Tennessee Titans. I'd have to look at all the numbers. Probably could have also signed Azeez Al-Shaair and Danico Autry back.
Yeah.
But they tried, and those guys didn't want to be here. And at the Tennessee Titans number, so at the team's numbers, those guys didn't want to be here. They left, and this team pivoted to Calvin Ridley. This team pivoted its entire offseason model to other players. The Rams are a really smart team. They probably do think that they can replace an inside linebacker like Ernest Jones. They got him in the third round. We can obviously draft another one in the third round and develop him. I could see that to be one of the factors. I could see that he wanted too much money, and they don't want to allocate that much money, no matter how good he is in this system for whatever reason. You got to remember, not every team operates the same way. So they may not value the linebacking position, or they valued him at a certain point, and they're like, "Hey, we're done because we're going to use this money elsewhere and help other positions of need in the future for this team." Because you got to think 2 or 3 years ahead. It's not just about this year and next year. It's about 2 or 3 years ahead. So that's just some of the reasons why. It's not necessarily it could just be kind of like a Molden situation, right? Like maybe they just in negotiations, or maybe at some point during practices or some point over the offseason, Sean McVay and Ernest Jones just decided to hate each other.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, sometimes shit goes sideways.
Yeah. So at this point, I think it's a steal.
I do too.
Everything revolves around injury, obviously, for any player. That's like it feels like we have to say that about every player that Tennessee Titans signed, but it's a universal disclaimer. All things created equal. This is a good signing.
Yeah.
And this gives you time for Cedric Gray. This puts Jack Gibby in his rightful spot on the depth chart, gives you time to develop James Williams. Otis Reese becomes a little bit more expendable. Luke Gifford probably becomes a little bit more expendable if you need those roster spots later on down the road. It's just to me, I look at it and I go, okay, we don't know if there's a deal yet. We don't know if this is a Matt Judon thing. Maybe he's just going to play out the year. Maybe they do sign him. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just let him walk and they get a compensatory pick for him, right? I mean, like, at the end of the day, if he signs here, if he's traded here and he's here and they let him walk and he goes get a contract somewhere else, there's maybe a compensatory pick waiting for the Tennessee Titans. There's all kinds of reasons this is a good trade outside of just the play on the field. But the play on the field is so important. And this defense, Stoney, let's just run through this defense real quick.
Let's do it.
Okay, because it's like all things on this Tennessee Titans team, the starting 11, 12-ish, is really good. Yes. Just what's behind it is pretty much terrible. Okay, that's so concerning. We're going to do a 4-3 defense. No, 3-4. 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers. Okay. Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day.
Yep, I like that.
Harold Landry, Arden Key. Then you have Ernest Jones, Kenneth Murray. Then we're going to go 3 corners: L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, Roger McCreary, then Amani Hooker and Quandre Diggs. That is an elite sounding defense.
Daddy like you, baby.
Sounds so freaking good. That's like a Madden. That's a Madden defense. And
It is.
obviously it has its like drawbacks and flaws, right? But Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, Ernest Jones, Snead, Awuzie, McCreary, Hooker, and Quandre Diggs, their level of play make up what Harold Landry, Arden Key, and Kenneth Murray may not be able to give you on any other year of a Titans defense. Like, they make those guys better.
And think about how these units function together within the confines of this defense, or what we expect the defense to be. You have two man corners that can lock down wide receivers, and you have a defensive front that can create interior pressure, and that is going to help with the pass rushers. But you also have linebackers that are going to be blitzing like crazy, that can see ball, get ball kind of deal. This is going to be a very aggressive defense, I expect. And I think it's going to work because of how these groups complement one another to lock down the field area and to create interior pressure, confuse quarterbacks, and constantly have them thinking about where the extra pressure is going to be coming from. I think it's been a masterclass of roster building on the defensive side.
It really has been, hasn't it? I mean, because I was thinking about it on the way to the Senior Bowl, and I think it's from the way back. On the way back from the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, when we talked about
we listened to Rand Carthon. Yeah, we listened to Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker on the OTP, the Official Titans podcast, and they talked about how you can't fix everything in one off season. You need to have expectations. It's going to take time. It's going to be about 2 or 3 years, and then you turn around and you're looking at this roster, and you're like, I think they fixed everything but depth. Like
everything but depth.
They did some work.
Yeah, like they've laid the foundation, and now this is where it's beneficial to have time to develop the guys like Jalen Harrell and James Williams and Cedric Gray, so that by the time you need them, the bones of the defense are in place, and they've developed nicely. If I may, by the way, John asks in the chat, on the film, did his knee look like it was going to fall off? No, John, I did not notice any significant detectable issues with Ernest Jones IV's knee.
And that's been kind of its own thing surrounding Ernest Jones. No one really knows what's going on with the knee.
Yeah.
It made me like ask Blaine, like, is there really a knee issue, or is his knee hurting because his bank account doesn't have a lot of money in it?
Well, don't know. Up in the air.
Yeah. That's kind of what it kind of felt to me, is like, is there really a knee issue? Or
yeah.
And apparently that nobody really knows. And that's the real thing.
Yeah.
Willie Jeans gets it. His knee didn't have enough cash on it. And that's kind of what I'm feeling.
I like that.
That's pure speculation.
Reckless speculation.
That stuff happens in these situations all the time. Okay, PK said his source said it's resolved. So whatever, well, it's resolved because he's off the LA Rams, and he doesn't have to negotiate contracts with them.
Yeah.
So my theory still holds. But at the end of the day, it's again a big win for the Tennessee Titans, a big win for Rand Carthon this entire offseason. To me, there isn't really a big issue. Like, let me say this. Let's look at this. If Sebastian Joseph Day doesn't work out, you're not really worried about it. And you're not really going to come at, Rand Carthon and call him incompetent. Maybe some people will, but I mean, that was a cheap deal. Could he have tacked edge better? Yes and no. You can only do what is available to you, right?
Yeah, sure.
Jordan DeJaney was on DeJaney.
We'll get there.
Right. We'll get there. I think that was it. I can say it on the radio, but I can't say it on a podcast. Jordan DeJaney said that it doesn't really seem like the Jets are too interested in moving off Hassan Reddick at a reasonable price. So at the end of the day, there's only so much he could have done in an offseason. But for the people that have said that this team is nothing without Mike Vrabel, this team is ran by an incompetent GM, this team isn't going anywhere because of this and that and all that kind of stuff, right now, this is the best Tennessee Titans team I've ever seen on paper. And I mean, for a long time. I
From a
mean,
talent perspective.
it's not early, Jeff Fisher, Steve McNair, Eddie George good, but this is the most gifted, high ceiling team we have seen in a really long time. They still have to put it together
Yeah.
on the field, and they have to come together, right? Because Ernest Jones is a new piece that just is getting dropped into a defense. L'Jarius Sneed and Cheeto have not practiced whatsoever, pretty much. Jeffrey Simmons hasn't played a game yet. Harold Landry hasn't got his feet wet either. So Amani Hooker, Amani Hooker did play, I think, the first game. Quandre Diggs played, I believe. Jamal Adams hasn't played. So there's a lot of pieces that still have to meld. And like we have talked about on the show, it may take 4 to 8 weeks for this entire thing to start, moving and grooving in a way that you want it to.
Yeah.
But when it gets moving and grooving, I feel like this is going to be a team down the stretch you do not want to face.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's something that I've been arguing a lot this summer is that it's going to tick Titans fans off to no end that all of this overhaul of the roster and overhaul of the coaching staff and the tantalizing possibilities of this passing game with 5 wide receivers streaking down the field. I think it's easy to get roped up into that, but I think this team's path to immediate success is going to be using those 5 tight ends that you have on the roster, running the ball with a new gap scheme, power running, and leaning on your defensive front. So those first 4 games, as things continue to gel in the passing game, I expect this team to kind of run the ball and play defense early. And I think that's going to tick off all these Titans fans that are wanting fireworks right out of the gate.
Well, let's end on this. Let's end on a sexy topic that everybody loves to talk about, and that's 12 personnel. The Tennessee Titans kept 5 tight ends that blew the circuit in some people's minds.
Yes.
Listen, I don't think they're going to still have 5 tight ends by the time week 1 rolls around, but we'll see. But it made me put out a tweet last night that tried to put things into perspective, because it's something that we have talked about, when we did a film study on Bill Callahan's run game, and we have talked on this show that, yes, this team is going to use 11 personnel more. No doubt about it.
Sure.
Right? This team is going to go from 53.8 or 52.8, whatever it was last. It was 53.8 last year. It's going to go up, I would say, around the mid 60s. But this idea that they were immediately going to drop a 11 personnel bomb and do this whole entire culture shock of going into like a 75 to 77%, or even 70%. I just don't think they're going to get to 70%. Wasn't really what this team has been about. You have talked about it numerous times. Bill Callahan loves to run from 12 personnel. He is the guy that is designing the run game. They have guys that can block in the run game, that can block in the pass game, that can catch balls, and they can do a lot of stuff out of 12 personnel. The Tennessee Titans last year, again, this is just last year Tennessee Titans, not this year, but Will Levis was more efficient out of 12 personnel than 11 personnel. Their whole entire offense's EPA went from negative 0.08 EPA per play in 11 personnel to positive 0.08 in EPA per play on 12 personnel. So I do think, though, that because of what they have done, they will use more 11 personnel. But this beginning of the year, this team is going to probably run the ball, like you said, a little bit more than what people want to expect. But there is a place for 12 personnel. I almost think that you could go 65%, 12 personnel, 20%, maybe even you probably go 65% and 25%, 12 personnel. I mean, this team will probably just mainly be in 11 or 12 personnel.
And the only thing that I would add to this discussion, Zach, is that your personnel kind of dictates that right now. You have tight ends that can do both. And I know that Brian Callahan has been careful to specify two different positions at tight end, basically. But you have Chigakonkwo, you have David Martin Robinson, both like pretty talented move guys, pass catchers. When they're not, when Chig is not dropping passes, I mean, he's an electric playmaker. And then you do have the big Tom O, and you have Josh Wiley in there that can do some of the heavy lifting and the blocking, sneak open in the flat, run up the seam, those sorts of things underneath. I think you can still be unpredictable with the personnel that they have. It's the tight ends being dynamic tight ends that makes the idea of 12 personnel with a different run gap scheme in the run game, running power, running counter, stuff like that. I think that's what makes the difference is that you can line some of these tight ends up like you would a wide receiver, and it's still you put Chig in the slot, Josh Wiley in line. That's not miraculously not 12 personnel all of a sudden. And I think that's where people get their wires crossed sometimes is like 12 personnel doesn't have to be like two inline blocking tight ends up there. So they can still do a lot of things because the tight ends that they have enable them to do that because of their wider skill set.
Well, that will do it for us. Stoney, thank you for joining on Football and Other. Oh, one more thing.
I've got my one more thing. While we're on the tight ends, Brian Callahan was asked why keep 5 tight ends in his press conference today, and he said something along the lines of, it's hard to find tight ends, which makes me think my takeaway from that is that Brian Callahan must play in a fantasy league with a mandatory tight end.
There you go. That was Stoney Keeley's one more thing. That will do it for us on Football and Other F Words. We're on the 104.5 zone. Make sure to like, turn on notifications, do all the cool stuff. And we really appreciate everybody hanging around and dealing with the technical difficulties that will probably eventually get this taken off the air. You can point to this episode as the reason that Football and Other F Words is not on anymore. But unfortunately, me and Mike are trying to schedule something where maybe we hold our Weavergate court case at another time, maybe record it, try to release it if we can.
I like that.
But we want to give the people what they want, and I don't want to be accused of myself running away from the grind and trying to sabotage, because I definitely don't know how to sabotage someone's internet several states away. So I'm trying to schedule something there. 104.5 The Zone, Blaine and Zach, Mondays through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. After Tennessee Titans games, will be Titans Talk Back with either me and Kevin Dyson with either Lucas or Brent Doherty, depending on if it's a home or away game. So that was fun. I did my first Titans Talk Back with just me and Lucas, and it went by so quick. It was crazy. So I appreciate all the kind words from everybody that has been watching the show, that's been watching the podcast. Hopefully today lets you really understand that we have not changed anything about this podcast for our corporate overlords here at Cumulus Media, who have been very kind to me and to us to let us put this on 104.5 The Zone's podcast network, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live.
Are you trying to butter them up because of the technical difficulties?
Yes, I definitely do not want them to take us off the air because of Mike's stupid internet.
Yeah. Oh boy.
His old I don't know what Ted Cruz is doing to the internet down there. He must be watching a lot of Cornhub, taking up the bandwidth down there. Yeah. But for Stoney and Mike, my name is Zach Lyons, and this has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.